Every day, the world gets a little weirder and a lot more awesome. Cool Stuff Daily takes a look at everything from mining in space to the latest in the fight against cancer to how AI is, basically changing everything. It's all the cool stuff you didn't know you needed to know. Join us for Cool Stuff Daily as we take a quick look at science, tech, and the wait, what stories that make you sound way smarter at dinner. Subscribe to Cool Stuff Daily now, because the future's happening fast, and it's way too fun to miss.
More sail, cried the sparrow.
You're listening to the Sailing into Oblivion podcast, where we sit down with everyday people who do extraordinary things. I'm your host, Jerome Rand.
Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the show. Oh, boy. You know, sometimes in life you make decisions, and then they turn out to be so spot on and so correct that you wake up with a big fat smile on your face. That's how I'm feeling right now, everybody. I'll tell you that much. Tied safely to a dock. Still getting heeled over a little bit, jostled up and down. The tide and the I wouldn't call it technically storm surge, but the tide is like 2 feet higher than I've ever seen it. So it's all getting pushed in here right now. I don't even know if it's actually high tide. That'd be worth looking at. But yeah, it's blowing a gale out there, and yeah, I'm so glad I'm not out there right now. Holy cow. I think back to just, 4 or 5 days ago when I was becalmed, a couple 100 miles east of here. And I looked at that forecast and I said, it looks like it's going to be a big enough system. You know, it wasn't like scary, crazy wind, 30s gusting into the 40s. Not fun by any means, but not something that Sparrow and I haven't been through many times before. It was just that the size of it was going to essentially, I knew, build up the waves pretty big. And I'm going to go down to the jetty at some point today to go see what it looks like, the Fort Pierce Inlet, when you've got 15-footers coming right in. And I'm going to try and go out there when the current is flowing out against that and see just how catastrophic this inlet can really be. But, it was howling last night. Definitely in the 40s, I would say. Gusting into the 40s, steady 30s for sure. So it is technically gale force. I think. We should look in the book. Where's my book? There it is. I got the old weather book here. Those always have the Beaufort wind force scale in them. And then we can actually just put this little mystery to bed. I can't believe I don't know the exact wind speeds. Where is Beaufort wind scale? Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, you'd think I would have this like memorized, but I think part of the reason I don't, honestly, is just because I don't have a wind speed indicator on Sparrow. So it's kind of like, well, is it windy? Yes, it feels windy, so it's windy. That's kind of how I've been rolling on this boat. Beaufort scale. All right, 56. Bear with me. Isn't this kind of an odd change of pace? Could you imagine if on some of these super popular podcasts, the person who's fact-checking was using a book instead of a computer? That'd be pretty hilarious. That would be pretty hilarious. All right, where is it? Come on. Dun, dun, dun. Man, these pages are sticky. I don't know why. Okay. Gosh, I wish I had some readers. I just woke up, folks. So, Beaufort, Force 8, Gale Force, 34 knots to 40 knots. Now, that's sustained. So that means the needle never drops below 34 knots. And then, obviously, it's going to gust much, much higher. But that's when you are in the realm of the gale. A lot of times, I think you get into a near gale, Force 7. And I've been in tons of those. Jeez Louise. But essentially, is it raining now? Yep, hold on. I got to go close the hatch. Ah. Gee. I already got one leak I got to fix. I do not need to take on any more water today. I'm already taking on water. Jeez Louise. Gotta love it. Life on a boat. Things they don't tell you. That was one of the things I remember about the Caribbean. In the squally seasons, I'd be out there on anchor or whatever, and holy cow, I feel like I closed and reopened every porthole on this boat multiple times a day, multiple times a night, just for these little 5-minute squalls, too. Super annoying. But then I'd remember I'm in the Caribbean, and it's all right. The world is good. Sorry about the slurp. Slovenia. But where were we? Yeah, the near gale. That one, I mean, it feels like you're in a gale when you're out there. That's for sure. But that one's 28 to 33 knots. And that's one where, it's gusting up into the mid-30s, sometimes the low 40s, and people are like, oh, I'm in this huge gale. But the needle's actually sitting in the 20s still. And so you're not really in a gale at that point. Although, like I said, it does feel like it. It's always much more intense when you're actually out on the high seas and the wind speeds get up into the high 20s, low 30s. It starts to get pretty real pretty quick, and anybody that's telling you otherwise, I don't know what they're thinking. They're a little bit cuckoo, I would say. But it's going to be blowing like this. It was started last night, and it's going to be blowing like this basically all day today. So it's going to be, that was the other thing, is this was going to be going on for more than 24 hours. And when that happens, I mean, if you're out there, you're dealing with pretty ugly conditions, and, it's going through your whole sleep cycle and everything as well. Kind of like when I came down from Cape Cod this year. That one actually lasted 48 hours, I think. I was in that sucker for like a couple days. And that got pretty brutal, pretty scary, but it was also pretty amazing to see the Mighty Sparrow just tear through that thing. Or actually, no, I shouldn't say tear through it, because we were running with it. But just watching the power of Mother Nature work with this sailboat, and not only the little itty-bitty sail that I had up, but the power of just the shape of the hull and everything to just freight train its way down these waves and just surf and just stay straight. And then even when it slows down and the wave passes underneath you, it just kind of holds its course. It's really quite cool. That's for sure. If you want to see any of that footage, you can go on YouTube. It's the last couple little videos. I think I did like a 6-minute one where it's just the view, what you see from the cockpit looking aft. But, yeah, you kind of get a sense of even though the camera always takes away from the height and the omnipresent feel of these waves. But yeah, let's go up in the Beaufort wind force scale. Let's go to Force 9, severe gale. Those are fun. Yeah. So that's when the wind speed is 41 to 47, so it's just holding. That's getting really real, and that sucks. And it's you feel an intensity level that starts to creep up, that's for sure. Force 10 is 48 to 55 knots. I remember being in that March gale in the Southern Ocean in the Pacific. That was pretty intense for sure. That was when we were down to just a storm jib, sheeted amidships, and just the waves. Man, I'll never forget the waves because we had almost a full moon, and they're just white crests everywhere. And that was when the wind started to drop off. We got knocked down, and then we had to essentially inch by inch put the triple reefed main back up so that we stopped getting pooped. And pooped is basically the term of when a wave comes over the stern and floods the cockpit, and that was happening a little too often, so I needed to kick up the speed. And then we go to that storm force 11 is violent storm. I don't know if I've ever actually been. I don't think I've ever been in anything like that's gone on for an extended period of time. So that's wind force of 56 to 63 knots. And there was a microburst that I went through where I had to go down to bare poles, but it was only for about 15 minutes. So I experienced the wind, but I didn't have to experience the waves, thankfully. And then obviously you go up to force 12, which is the highest, which is hurricane strength, and that's 64 knots and above. And you can imagine, I mean, you get these hurricanes, if you get stuck in one of those and it's blowing 120, 130 knots, and that's the minimum, I mean, jeez, good luck with that. I remember getting asked one time by my buddy Constantine, the Cosman, if you remember him, friend of the show. He was out there helping us with the Marie Tharp when we were out on that Rutherford expedition. And he asked me, he was like, dude, if it's blowing like 85, 90 knots, like, what do you do at that point? And I was like, dude, tell you what, I would probably put up some tiny little storm jib, turn downwind, and just go for the ride of my life, because chances are it's going to be your last. And you know what? If I'm going to go down, I might as well go down sailing. And he just laughed. It was like, there's no like technique for that. I was like, bro, in those sort of conditions, when things get that wild, it's just insane. I mean, even the idea of sitting on deck, you're talking ski goggles, just to be able to keep your eyes open. The force of that sort of wind is pushing you down against things. Like, it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. Ugh. And I don't even know. I can only imagine, because I've never been in 85 knot winds and 50-foot seas all at the same time. That would just be absolutely, I don't know. I hope I never see it, but there is a little teeny tiny part of me that, I don't know, wouldn't mind seeing it. But I'll tell you, I remember once the trip around the world was finished, there was this small sense that on that trip, I never had to go through what I would call survival conditions, where it was just like insane. There were definitely moments for sure, but there was never that feeling of like total dread. And I'm pretty sure we are going to go down, and this is just way more than this boat or myself can handle. That really never, and it might have just been my naivete, if you will, that I never recognized those conditions when I was in them. But it just never, if you don't feel it, you don't feel it. And that 2022 trip, though, I'll tell you, I felt that for sure when I was in that eddy of the Gulf Stream and I saw those monster waves. That was definitely the feeling of like, wow, it's a roll of the dice every 20, 30 seconds when one of these waves comes through. This is this scary stuff. So that being said, like I said, it's pretty nice to be tied off to the old dock right here and thinking about what I'm going to cook for breakfast on a level playing field. If I position myself out there, and I think the game plan, the decisions I was trying to make at that point were, one, see if I could make it around the Abacos and back to Fort Pierce before this system got here, which I had, I think, 4 days to do it, and it was about 300 something miles. Winds weren't going to be great for it, but, we had fuel and all that sort of stuff. The other was, okay, well, we got to position ourselves so that we can run before this thing and not run into any land. We want to make sure we have as much sea room as possible. So I would have actually just gone. My plan was, if I was going to stay out, was to then head to the north as much as I could. And that would have done kind of two things in my mind. One, it would have definitely given me all the sea room I needed, because this wind is mostly east-northeast, so it's kind of angled down. And that would have made it so no land in sight. I could have run for 3 days in this thing if I wanted to. And then also, I would have reached the tail end of it, because the whole system is pushing to the south and then dissipating. I would have reached the tail end of it hopefully a little sooner. Maybe even go and hove to just for the beginning of it, just to let that go by. And then once the waves got big enough, then you just start running with it and go and have some fun. But like I said, my decision was sound. It was safe, and I'm relishing in the results, because I was trying to sleep last night, and it's just howling through the rigging, and oh man, all the auditory sensations were there. There was enough jostling of the boat, because we are in a very, very deep protected area. So, we're way down the inlet, and then you take a left, and then then the marina has these breakwater rock piles all around them, and there's a decent amount of fetch, but not much. In between us and the barrier island and everything out there. So to be getting jostled around this much where I am right now is pretty incredible. But I will say the other thing is, as I look around this marina, and there are a lot of hunters and, just lighter weight, sportier boats out here. And I look at their masts, and I'm seeing them wobbling all over and heeling with the wind and all that stuff. And then I look at Sparrow's mast, and we're moving a little bit, for sure. We're a boat, but we're not. You can just tell the difference between the weight of a vessel by when these little choppy waves and these gusty winds come in, how much they actually move or not. So I'm kind of glad I'm on Old Sparrow. She looks like a stout, stable little platform compared to a lot of these other sailboats out here. So, big news. All right, we are going to go and hop right back out on the sea after this system blows through and the waves calm down a little bit. But we're going to be going on a different boat. And hopefully we'll get the captain of that, the owner of that, the captain owner, I should say. Hopefully we'll get him on the show, actually. Possibly before and possibly after. It's going to be, I believe, his first offshore passage. And, he just bought the boat. Needs some help basically learning the systems. And we're going to rip from Fort Pierce all the way up to the Charleston area, which is about 350 miles, give or take. To get up there, we've got a pretty favorable forecast after this system blows through. And so I think in just maybe 2 days from now, we'll be chugging our way right back out to sea for a quick 2-dayer up to the old Charlestown, which should be pretty fun. And, it'll be nice to get on another vessel, obviously make a little bit of money. That is much needed. All the bills for for keeping a boat on a dock in Florida were hefty. Let's just say that, compared to where I normally would up in the Carolinas and all that sort of stuff, which I think next year, unless we have like a banner year, we'll probably end up going back to the Carolinas next year, but we'll see. I don't know. You never know. That's the future. Future is not now. Now is now, and I'm enjoying it. It has been fun, but I haven't been able to even be down on the boat as much as I thought I would, and even the weather out here is pretty frightful sometimes. Good example is today. I'll bet you we're going to get some pretty sick rainbows. I am going to try. I want to get down to that jetty. Oh man, that's going to be so cool. I remember years and years and years ago trying to come up from, I don't know exactly where it was, probably Beaufort, South Carolina, and go back up to Maine. And there was a pretty ugly system that was going to come off the coast, and it looked like I would get my way pretty far north of it and make it into the Gulf of Maine and all that sort of stuff, and stay out of it. But forecasts being forecasts, they're not always 100% correct, and ended up pulling into Ocean City and taking refuge in a very empty marina, but a very expensive one for sure.
This is Mike Bolo of Lexicon Valley.
And I'm Bob Garfield. Are you one of those people who sometimes uses words?
Do you communicate or acquire information with, language?
Hey, us too. So join us on Lexicon Valley to chew over the history, culture, and many mysteries of English, plus some wisecracks.
Find us on one of those apps where people listen to podcasts.
And at the behest of friends and family that were pretty concerned. And that one, that one was severe gale, force 9, because I remember just being tied to that dock. We chewed through like almost an inch of their pylons. And yeah, it was pretty gnarly. We were heeled over at that dock for, I think it was 5 days. It just kept blowing and blowing and blowing. And I remember when I looked at the Gulf Stream currents and all that sort of stuff out there, the current was flowing in the opposite direction. Now, I don't know if that's actually humanly possible, if it's just like the surface water is moving that way, but it was freaking brutal. Popped 2 lines, I believe. I had to like spider web my way onto that dock. And part of it was that, I was in the thick of it. But fun fact, that was actually also the marina that Michael Jordan keeps his sport fishing boat, or did at that point. So that was pretty cool. It wasn't there though. I didn't get to meet him. That would have been pretty cool. But yeah, we did have a leak. So I replaced little hydraulic ram arm on the forward hatch. And when I did that, unfortunately, some of the ancient caulking around the little rim of wood that this thing is screwed into kind of got pulled out when I replaced the part. And I looked at it and I was like, no, that's not essential stuff. There's no way water's getting in there. Yeah. Okay, water got in there. So we get a little bit of a break in the weather today, and at least in the rain. And I got to go up there and rebed that, and because I was like, I keep hearing this tapping, and it rained really hard last night, like a ton, to the point of I got up and to go and see if I thought there was just something in the way. I couldn't close the hatch all the way. So obviously I had to go out there. So I'm in my little boxer shorts and step into the footwell in the cockpit, and there's like 3 inches of water in there. And, I had just pressure washed the boat and stuff, and sometimes all this detritus gets, or debris, whatever, clogs up the little scuppers in there, and I was able to fish all that out. But I was like, dang, it is really freaking raining out here. Once again, I was reminded of just how nice it is to be on the dock rather than out there on the ocean when it's just pelting whiteout rain. Oh, man. Oof, it gets so brutal. I think some of the worst stuff I did seeing that was 2021, setting off into the ocean once more. That was the year I was going to try and round Cape Horn backwards, and then ended up going through Tropical Storm Wanda. That one, God, that was, ugh. We got into the Gulf Stream and we were riding it, and there was one day and night where every hour on the hour, another squall, whiteout condition, reef down. As soon as it's over, take at least one reef out and switch back to the staysail, and then the next hour another one would roll in, and it did it all the way into the night. That was one of those brutal days where you're just working so hard, you're getting no rest, and your nerves start to get real rattly and real shattery, and you're just like, make it stop. And every time one of these squalls goes through, you're like, hopefully that's the last one. And it's not. It never is until it finally is, but it's usually when you stop saying that all of a sudden it does clear up a bit. That's always the rule out there. But yeah, absolutely gnarly. I'm so glad I'm here right now. Got a nice coffee, got a comfy, and I slept really well last night. Woke up just a couple of times with the wind and stuff, but it's typically the second night when you get back to land that you actually get a good night's sleep. The first night when I got back here, I was just like, I don't want to say I was in shambles, but you're so exhausted from trying to navigate the islands, the Gulf Stream, the cruise ships, and the containers. Or not containers, container ships. Excuse me. And you just don't get to sleep at all, really. I mean, maybe an hour in 24. And typically, if the weather conditions aren't great the day before that, when you're just trying to get into that channel in between the berries and the abacos and all that sort of stuff, you don't sleep much at all then either. So you're going on this 48-hour marathon. And I've done it a bunch of times, and I'm getting better at it to where I know where you can go to sort of stay out of the shipping lane where it's heaviest, and that allows you a little bit more wiggle room to get some sleep. But still, you're not getting much sleep at all. And so by the time I pull back into Fort Pierce, I'm just like, whoa. And if it's at all sloppy coming back from through the Gulf Stream, that adds to the land sickness. So you're kind of walking funny and everybody's like looking at you, and all you want to do is sleep, but you're so wired from just making it back successfully that you can't. So usually you attend whatever cocktail hour is happening in the area and tell a few stories until your brain just says go to your bunk. And then I heed that call usually around like 7 p.m. And people are like, "You're going to bed?" I'm like, dude, you have no idea how exhausted I am. But then, yeah, it's a fitful sleep. You never really get a good night's sleep that first one. Just constantly waking up, constant confusion. You don't know where you are. And that's always pretty much been the situation. Anytime you are not rested at all by the time you get into port. And for a solo sailor, usually that's always, mostly just because the closer you are to land, the closer you are to traffic, the less you can sleep, and that's indicative of pulling back into port. Which is why over all these years, one of the reasons why I've always chosen the offshore route for pretty much any passage I do, because that's my little area where I can get back to that good sleep cycle and, just be able to crash out because you're the only one out there and you can sleep for an hour or two wake up, look around, go back to your bunk, sleep for an hour or two, wake up, look around, and you can do that. You do that all night, you're going to be fairly well rested in the morning for sure. But the other sort of kick in the pants for getting back in here this time was that I was almost out of the main part of the Gulf Stream, and the wind just got so light, and it came from directly astern, and I was like, oh man. And I couldn't sail anywhere. I could only get the sails because there was enough swell and wave action. I could only get the sails to hold if I headed almost due south, which is basically I was doing 0.5 of a knot. So I was just countering the Gulf Stream. And then the other one, I would head back basically out to sea. And that was the only way I could hold the wind where the sails would only slat every once in a while. And so you just have no choice. You have to, if you want to, I guess my only other choice would have been to try some semblance of heaving to and sit there. But the winds were so light, I probably would have had to use like a drifter and the full mainsail to even get any semblance of the effect of a heave to. And like, no, it wasn't. It wasn't in the cards. What was in the cards was to fire up the engine when I was like, I don't know, 36 miles out, and sheet home the main, take down the jib, and just start motoring. And it was hot. And when that sun got up high enough, it was just brutal. And it's loud, and the swell was still there, so that the sail is slatting. And you're in hot water. The deck is hot. The engine's hot. So I keep all the engine companionway open. There's a fan in there that I just blows on the engine to keep it, cool. And it did its thing. It got up to its regular temperature and stuff, and it just held. It didn't keep climbing inch by inch or anything like that, which is great. Engine again did a fantastic job. Although it had this weird behavior, and I definitely accredit this to the swell, because I was kind of going with the waves, and so the wave would kind of pick you up, and so every once in a while the tone of the engine would go like, it'd be like, and that always unnerves me. Anytime the engine's making anything but a gentle hum is a gentle hum. I don't think I've ever described this engine as a gentle hum. If it's doing anything rather than a thunderous roar, making any sort of up and down noises or anything like that, it always perks my attention for sure, or piques my attention. And it was doing that a little bit, and I was like, oh man, what's going on here? I don't like that. Because the biggest fear always is that, you get into like the jetties or the main part of the inlet where the current's doing 2.5 knots, and all of a sudden your engine dies and there's not enough wind for you to do anything, and you've only got mere minutes before disaster strikes. And, obviously, if you can, you throw down your anchor, and you hold your position, try and figure out what's going on. Or a more sensible sailor would probably be signed up for something like sea tow and be able to get them on the horn and then get towed right in. I think I'm going to actually probably look into that, just because from what I understand, it's only a couple $100 for a membership in that. And if you have to call them and you don't have a membership, then essentially what you end up getting is a huge bill. I don't know how much, but I would think well over $1,000. And that's just for one little rescue tow. But I don't know. I've never had it before. And I think in some teeny tiny respect, it if you don't have that safety blanket, you're a little bit more thorough, at least myself personally. I go through the diligence. I don't ever like, oh, well, I didn't change the fuel filter it should be okay. I don't do that. I'm like, I'm going to change all these filters, make sure we got our best chance to get in and out and back home safe under engine. And you know me, if you've listened to the show, you know we have a lot of problems with this engine over the years, from overheating to fuel starvation to clogged filters to fuel in the oil to lift pumps. Yeah, you name it, we've dealt with it, and knock on wood, it is it's still going. It's going great. And you know, that whole time I was out there, I didn't fire up the engine. You know, once I shut down the engine outside of Fort Pierce and was sailing, that engine didn't come back on until we were basically becalmed 35 miles from Fort Pierce and had to get back in. And it fired up pretty much straight away on, you know, and that was in the early morning. So the battery system and everything hadn't been charged up by the sun or anything like that, but she fired right up, which was great. It's so nice when you can count on your engine. It just gives you a sense of, I don't know, reliability that when you're on the other side of that and the engine's not working correctly and every minute you have to run down and pump the lift pump manually, that's not fun. It doesn't exude confidence in one's in one's ability to make it safely into a busy, narrow channel and then also get onto the dock. But lo and behold, we did. And I think a lot of that, is sort of the due diligence. And today, one of the projects after a bit of writing is going to be the engine room. We're going to go and clean the engine room. I'll probably, just out of curiosity, not out of necessity, because I have not put very many hours on the fuel filter, but I'm probably at least going to remove and look at the primary fuel filter just to see how that looks. If it's got a bunch of, algae particles, it looks like coffee grounds, that sort of thing on it, then I'll replace it. But if it doesn't, if it looks pretty good, then I'll throw it right back in there. It'll be kind of interesting to see a little bit of I don't know, just one of those things. I'm curious. I want to see what's going on in my tanks. The wonderful comedian, writer, James Hodge, I was talking with him. We're going to hopefully get him back out on the boat at some point. He's built his own fuel polishing contraption, and he's offered to test it out on Old Sparrow, which I think is pretty cool. I don't know if he's actually tested out. I should ask him that. Have you tested this on your own boat? Before I have them unleashed on mine, but I don't know. I figure it can't hurt. They're insane little things. The one that we did up in Maine, it's pretty cool. And the amount of gunk that came out of my fuel tanks back then was remarkable, to say the least. So that was about it. But we are at the tail end of March, so it's time to start plotting and planning to get north on the Old Sparrow. Got a few things to do. The only other concern is Mongo. Mongo definitely has got me in, it's given me a case of the vapors. At least it was when it kept trying to jibe us. I think when I get back from this next trip, or if conditions allow, we've got to take apart at least the top section to see what the heck is going on there, if the roller bearings have flattened out or if it's all gunked up with something. I do have a few spare roller bearings, but the other one is just trying to nail down where these parts that I ordered either went, are being held, or if they never even got sent in the first place. So that's I got to get my Sherlock cap on and figure that one out. But yeah, like I said, just going to kind of enjoy it, enjoying the motion of the ocean while tied off to the dock. It feels good. It really feels good. Might even just take a nap today. It's going to be kind of one of those rainy days, but I've got some projects I want to do. and some other stuff to tie up. Talk to Oliver, aka Sailing with Phoenix, about how things are going out there. Pretty hopeful that a month or so we'll be launching that boat, get back out to Seattle, and take her out for some shakedown sails. It's going to be pretty exciting stuff. I'm going to try and get him back on the podcast, but unfortunately the internet is not super good here. It's definitely not good enough to be able to do a video podcast with him, but if you ever want to know what the heck's going on, he's documenting it in real time all day, every day on his Instagram and other various sources. But I think his most up-to-date stuff is all YouTube or Instagram stories. He puts out probably 15 of those every day of everything he's doing, and he goes through a lot of frustration, constantly up against problems, but he's solving them eventually, and that is a skill that he is definitely going to need, and he is also very much learning as he does all this, because once he gets out there to try and make it around the world, that's problems are just getting kept throwing at you constantly. So it's good that he's doing it. It's good that he's doing it on his own for the most part, and proud of him. Definitely proud of him. I think it's pretty cool. So I think that's about it for this show. I will be uploading a couple other ones. I've got a little bit of a back catalog. I have a really interesting show where I sat down with Ernesto from Cuba, who is he's immigrated here to the United States a few years back, and he's working his way in, and he's just an outstanding human being, and it was so interesting to talk to him. And then I also have a recording of a podcast that I did, the Ageless Athlete podcast, and they sent me the audio from that, and so I'm going to probably upload that one as well as an extra show. He was super, super cool. I think his name's Kush. Better double check that one real quick. Kush. And he's a mountain climber, but he interviews all sorts of people, different adventure types, and we just talk about sort of the need to do it and what you get out of it and some of the challenges that you face when you're doing adventurous style kind of living. So that one was pretty cool. So I'll throw those out over the next couple of days. And thank you all so much for your support. Thank you for all the stuff. Obviously you can reach out to the show. Just check the links in the description. I know I didn't do the intro thing today, but that's okay. All right, everybody, have a great day. And until next time.
The Bleacher Report app is your destination for sports. Right now, the NBA is heating up, March Madness is here, and MLB is almost back. Every day there's a new headline, a new highlight, a new moment you've got to see for yourself. That's why I stay locked in with the Bleacher Report app. For me, it's about staying connected to my sports. I can follow the teams I care about, get real-time scores, breaking news, and highlights all in one place. Download the Bleacher Report app today so you never miss a moment.
This is Mike Bolo of Lexicon Valley.
And I'm Bob Garfield. Are you one of those people who sometimes uses words?
Do you communicate or acquire information with, language?
Hey, us too. So join us on Lexicon Valley to chew over the history, culture, and many mysteries of English, plus some wisecracks.
Find us on one of those apps where people listen to podcasts.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.